shiner. And interestingly, when the list of talks came out, I noticed that this is the only talk that is specific towards the emerald shiner, which I thought was kind of cool, seeing as it's a forage themed conference, so it's very fitting. And so, no further ado, what the heck is going on with the emerald shiner? A look at a native species through the lens of an invasive species early detection program. So I'm a biologist with the service, and I'm with the Aquatic invasive species portion of our program. And essentially, we kind of specialize in early detection and monitoring of aquatic invasive fish and also macroinvertebrates. And so we do a lot of sampling looking for something that, in most cases, is not there. We're looking for things that are new invaders. And so we do a lot of sampling looking for essentially what is a unicorn in most cases. And as you can see, we wrestle a lot of carp from time to time. That can be a bit of a dirty job. We do ichthyoplankton looking for these invaders. We do benthos looking for macroinverts. We also do eDNA, and a part of our component is outreach, which we inform the public about the impacts of invasive species. So we're out there and we're putting a lot of effort into looking for what is not there most of the time. And so we end up with this bycatch. But interestingly enough, this bycatch is of our own native species. And one of our most productive gears is electrofishing, and we do 10-minute electrofishing transects. And obviously, this is a very non-specific type of sampling. And so we catch a lot of the native fish community, and we take lengths, counts, collect a lot of this bycatch data essentially. But one thing we've noticed as we go back and look through this native fish data set is that we're not catching as many of these as we used to 4 or 5 years ago. Right here, these are emerald shiners. And so we were curious if we could apply this huge data set we're sitting on towards helping address, that question of where the emerald shiners have been. And so why single out a shiner? Well, for starters, they're one of the bases of the food web in the lower Great Lakes, especially in Lake Erie. They're short, fast-growing fish. They live about 3 years. They're pelagic and schooling in tendencies. They make up a big part of the food web. As you can see here, it's a picture of a common tern. So a lot of piscivorous fish and birds predate, especially yellow perch, and steelhead will use them in the fall in Lake Erie. They make up a substantial part of the bait fish industry within Great Lakes portions of the lower Great Lakes. You go to any bait shop, around Buffalo, and you ask for a bucket of minnows, you're going to end up, with emerald shiners. And so SUNY Buffalo State actually kind of raised the red flag with this. They did a study in 2014, 2015, and they based off anecdotal evidence of bait shop owners and also fishermen saying, hey, where are the shiners at? We haven't been seeing them. And so they kind of set out in just the Niagara River specifically, and what they did was they electrofished the river, and catch per unit effort was declined completely in half from 2014 to 2015. So they caught half as many shiners. So they saw a huge decline just in that short little glimpse that they were funded to sample. And so that kind of got us thinking, what is our data set that is much larger in time series say, and does it correlate with that study? So we surveyed, as I mentioned, the lower Great Lakes and a couple specific locations in general. And so this is obviously, this is Buffalo area, and you have the upper Niagara River, and also Buffalo Harbor. And so we've sampled, these are all electrofishing. We've done 6 years at this location, and we've done a total of 219 10-minute electrofishing transects looking for invasive species. So we're covering a good portion of this area. We're putting a lot of effort into it. We're catching a lot of fish. So we thought this would be a really good place to kind of match up the Niagara River study with what we're seeing in our data set. We also do a lot of work in Lake Ontario location. This is Rochester, and you have Irondequoit Bay, and also the Genesee River. And we have a 4-year timeline. We've done 108 electrofishing transects in this location. So we're able to look at these two areas since we have a lot of data on them. And interesting enough, one's a Lake Ontario location, one's a Lake Erie location. Kind of see if there's any differences amongst them as well. And so, those are our main looking at temporal trends at both these locations. Also very interested, they line up with what the Niagara River study was suggesting. And does any of our information suggest what may be going on with the population of emerald shiners in essentially the lower Great Lakes to a small degree? So we plotted everything, and this is what we came up with. On the y-axis, you have the mean catch per unit effort. So this is fish per 10-minute electrofishing transect. And then you have the years here. The black bolded, this is the number of electrofishing transects that occurred for that data point. And the red line is Buffalo Upper Niagara River, so in Lake Erie location. And the blue line is Rochester, and this is the Lake Ontario location. As you can see, we didn't catch a lot in 2012, but there was a huge boom in how many we caught almost 3 times as many in 2013. Obviously, there's a lot of areas as a schooling fish, so it's feast or famine a lot of times when you collect them. And then we just see a really steady decline to still, we're still in a very low state as far as emerald shiner catch electrofishing was in this location. And also in Rochester, we see the same exact trend, essentially 2 different lakes. So we were kind of curious, what kind of happened in 2012 and 2013 for this essentially a boom, and then what also happened, 2013, 2014 to send it in, 4 years worth of a downward trend. And so we want to look at age class structures to kind of give us some insight towards that. And so this would be, let's just call it a general productive emerald shiner age structure. And so what you have is a lot of juveniles, a lot of age 1s, a good amount of age 2s, and then age 3s you're not going to see a lot of. They get eaten, so they don't live that long. And so this is what you would want to see, knowing that next year you probably have a pretty good recruitment class. And so kind of keep that in your mind as we go through some more length frequency distributions. So these are length frequency distributions of Buffalo Upper Niagara, so that Lake Erie location, from 2012 to 2017. So what you see in 2012 is there's generally a pretty good distribution age classes. However, we're just not catching a lot of emeralds. Then you go to 2013, and we're catching a lot of 1s, but it's still relatively even for a forage base, and we're catching more. You go to 2014, and that's a very robust structure. It's very similar to what we just saw in the last slide. And so there was a good amount of recruitment and survivorship going from 2013 to 2014. And you go from 2014 to 2015, and you're missing a whole age class. You go from 2015 to 2016, you're missing your juveniles and your age 1s. You're just left with your 2s and 3s. Then you go from 2016 to 2017, and you no longer have those 2s and 3s, they've died, they're out of the population. However, there's appeared to be pretty good recruitment from 2016 to 2017. And so we got real curious about, what are some potential drivers of this? So that's the big question here is, what happened between 2014 and 2015 to start to kind of knock dominoes down for this age structure regarding the emerald shiner. This is looking at the same exact figure, but looking at Rochester, so Lake Ontario location. And as you can see, 2014 is very robust. This is the same year that Lake Erie was very robust as well. And then you can see, as you go forward, we just stopped catching emerald shiners in that location altogether. So we got curious about looking at adults and juveniles. And so this is the Lake Erie location, Buffalo Upper Niagara River. And so you have here the same thing. This is catch per unit effort, fish per 10-meter electrofishing transect over time. And what you see is from 2012 to 2013, in 2012 you have a pretty even juvenile to adult ratio, although catches were low. And then you go from 2012 to 2013, you had good recruitment and what appears to be pretty good survivorship. You're just adding to the population. Then you go from 2013 to 2014, and what you see is survivorship appears, at least from the way we're catching these fish with electrofishing gear, that it's actually kind of increasing. However, you're losing juveniles essentially. And then this continues from 2014 to 2015, which makes sense because age 1 emerald shiners are the bulk of the spawning class. So if you lose, zeros, you're probably going to lose zeros the second year, so you don't have any spawners. But interestingly enough, there's kind of a glimmer of hope down here to a degree. As you can see, 2016, 2017, we kind of see juveniles, essentially recruitment, start to come back up on an upward trend. And this is same graphic, just looking at the Lake Ontario location. And you can see it follows a similar trend from 2014, and it just stayed down along with recruitment. We didn't catch a lot of fish 2015 to 2017. So what we've noticed, is obviously Rochester, there's a decline. Buffalo Upper Niagara River, there's a decline. And so I got curious about these areas over here. We have a neighboring location, a Fish and Wildlife Office, Alpena, who does similar work in Maumee and Sandusky Bays of the western basin of Lake Erie. However, they have much better success using bottom trawls and also fight nets because the water is very turbid over there, so electrofishing isn't exactly ideal. And so this is just total number of emerald shiners collected by their gears each year at these locations. So the dashed is Sandusky Bay, and the solid is Maumee Bay. And so you can see they caught, you know, a lot of fish in bottom trawls 2013, and they're not catching anything afterwards. And then you look at paired pike nets, you know, they're catching over 80,000 in Sandusky Bay 2013, and they're virtually catching almost nothing afterwards. So there's something going on here. It's wiping out, you know, it's wiping out the population, at least within the last 4 years. So what could be driving these declines is the next obvious question. And obviously, when we talk about a forest fish, predation is always, you know, a major driver. However, the fact that we see this decline widespread amongst Lake Erie and then various spots in Lake Erie and also in a location in Lake Ontario, in those places all can be considered to have a relatively different predator base. You know, predation probably plays a role, but I don't think it's the main driver. So then we go to the next thing, environmental, and that's what they kind of seem to share. The climate. All these locations get cold in the winter and similarly cold all together. And so we wanted to look at essentially, all right, let's look at that theory of climate and let's look at winter harshness. So this is a graphic. Look, this is average Lake Erie water temperature from NOAA, and this is the number of days in which the water temperature was below 6.9 degrees Celsius. So this is roughly, I think, about 44 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason we use this is because a study by McCormick and Kleiner suggested that emerald shiners saw very little net growth at water temperatures below 6.9 degrees C. So they're not really packing on any weight at below this. So we kind of made it our cutoff for what would be a harsh day in the lake for these little guys. And so what you see is, you know, you have cold, like some less days, and then some other points, some other years have a lot more days. And so if you plot that adult juvenile graph from Buffalo over top of this, it kind of corresponds. So like the 2011 would be the winter, and then in the middle would be the summer of 2012, winter of 2012, and so on, to kind of help you depict it a little better. And so you can see in 2012, very mild winter. And so there was a lot of recruitment, a lot of survivorship. But then you hit 2013, you have almost a month more of days at which the water temperature was below 6.9 degrees Celsius. And so that's where we see recruitment completely drop off, but survivorship continues. And it even continues over even harsher winter in 2014. But essentially you don't see the juveniles. Now you fast forward towards the end here, and what you're seeing is a mild 2015. You're starting to see juveniles come back. And so it appears that there may be something going on with how harsh a winter is compared to some of these population dynamics for emerald shiners. And so we see that at Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, they show similar emerald shiner declines. And you can see it in the age structures, in the way that they shift. And so it appears for emerald shiner, I use a Game of Thrones reference, winter is coming, and it's gonna affect you. However, it's very interesting in how it affects these guys because it's not killing them. Like in the case of Elwha, you'll have die-offs, some very hard winters. They can survive the winters just fine. However, their reproductive abilities greatly suffer. So they're utilizing so much lipid and caloric energy surviving through those harsh winters, they have nothing to give come spawning time, which is June, early July. So right after you get out of that winter. And so recruitment's affected, and mainly it's reproductive effort that's affected, not survivorship. And so as far as management implications go, it's interesting. These fish play a major role, especially in Lake Erie, for species such as walleye, yellow perch, and then seasonally for things such as steelhead. And so that may be something that managers want to keep in mind as you go through, and if you've had harsh winters, this may not be an option at the food at the dinner table, essentially. So it might be something useful for managers to keep in mind moving forward. So with that, I want to thank you guys for attending, and I'll try to field any questions if we have time.